Planning Board for Monday, March 28th. We'll start off with public comment.
Don't you have to read the duty? No? No? Okay. Never mind.
I don't think so.
No.
No. Any comment from the board?
I have some comment, but it's as a member of the public.
Okay.
So last Tuesday, the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board met and decided to go a different direction with the drainage problem on Flat Hill, which I was very happy to hear. And we had a site walk on Saturday morning, and it looked like there's some headway to be made with how I felt personally as a citizen that the town dropped the ball almost 30 years ago in allowing a subdivision to exert a huge amount of flow on the Flat Hill Road. So I just want to, again, state how happy I am that the town seems to be picking up that ball.
Excellent. Any other comments from the board? All right, moving on to our first public hearing, which was continued from March 14th for 225 and 259 Leominster Shirley Road.
Good evening. Brian Marchetti, McCarty Engineering. As you said, this hearing was continued from a couple of weeks ago. At the hearing, there were a few items of concern the board wanted us to further explore. First one being, we had yet to conduct test pits in the septic system location, or the proposed septic location on the property where Palestone and Gravel Garage is currently located. We did conduct test pits last Friday. They were witnessed by Jim Gareffi with the Neshoba Board of Health. So we received the test pit data we needed, the soil data. We did identify there was more fill than we thought there was going to be. However, it's still a viable site. The soils were sandy soils mixed with gravel. Samples were taken. They're being sent out for analysis so we can establish a perk rate. So there were no issues encountered. It's a viable site, easily designed septic system, and the soils are going to be very conducive to a septic system. So we also did testing in the stormwater detention area. On the eastern portion of the site, soils there, we went down 10 feet. There were a couple feet of fill over the top of straight coarse sands and medium sands. No groundwater encountered, no modeling, down to 10 feet. So as designed, our infiltration system is more than adequate. The other issue that you wanted us to explore was the water main extension from Reservoir Road to the property. As I said, we submitted the plans for a water main extension 6 months or so ago. Back in October, we received kind of verbal approval, but never had anything in writing back from the water commissioners. So we approached them last week. The board just had a couple of comments for us based on the plan we had submitted. They actually wanted us to reduce the size of the pipe. There's a 16-inch main where we're connecting into at Reservoir Road. So we had showed a 16-inch pipe running in a westerly direction all the way to Fort Pond Road, and then an 8-inch main or 12-inch main extended to the site. They actually asked us to reduce it from a 16-inch down to a 12-inch. So that day we submitted revised plans back to the water department. The water department had a meeting that night. They reviewed and approved the plan, and they submitted a letter stating as such to the board. So that should be in your possession. We had proposed on our plans, I had mentioned that there was a hydrant across the street. That was our proposed design with the water main extension. Relocated or located a new hydrant directly across the street from our proposed building on the Palestone and Gravel site. The hydrant is 100 feet away from the building. It had to be across the street because on the Palestone and Gravel side of Leominster Shirley Road, there are 2 high-pressure gas mains that are located along the shoulder of the road and underneath the landscaped area as proposed. So the gas department was very clear with us when we were proposing this water main installation. There's to be no installation of any crossings or any water directly. We could cross it, but they didn't want any permanent installations within the proximity to their high-pressure gas mains. So we are providing a hydrant there. I do have on the plan, which I'll show you in a second, but it is 100 feet from the building as requested by the fire department. One of the statements that the water commissioners made was plans approved as is. Just final specifications need to be submitted to the water department before they plan the installation. So plans as they are adequate for them. We just need to provide actual material specifications to the department for their review before they can actually do the installation. So all of this will be planned with the other abutters who live along this roadway. They're going to come to an agreement about who's paying for what and who's responsible for the installation, but it will be done by, a combination of Powell Stone and Gravel and other contractors.
Okay.
So,
If you could just go over the test pit information
Yep.
for
Certainly.
Mrs. Bertram's benefit and show us on the plan, that'd be great.
So, last Friday, after our meeting a couple weeks ago, we scheduled test pits with Jim Gareffi, the Show Board of Health on the property. We did 2 test pits here and here within the footprint of the infiltration basin, and we did 2 test pits up in here in the vicinity of where the septic system's going. The first 2 test pits, we dug them down to 10 feet. There was a couple feet of fill over straight coarse and medium sands. So no groundwater encountered, no seeping, no modeling in the test pits in the stormwater area. The test pits over in the septic system location, we dug down to 15 to 17 feet. So we got really deep. We did encounter 6+ feet of fill, 6 to 10 feet of fill in areas over a sand layer. One of the test pits, it was straight sand underneath that fill layer. The second test pit we had layers of sand, but there was a gravel in between that was more restricting than just the straight sands. So that's where, because of the depth of it, we didn't actually conduct perk tests, 10, 12 feet down. So we excavated samples of the material that Jim said was the more restrictive layer, and we're going to send those in for analysis, and we'll use the perk test based on the sample given to us. So based on the location, based on the test pits and the soil horizon, they're still viable location for the septic system. Jim was fine with it. We just know we have to remove that layer of fill above the sea horizon when the septic system is constructed.
So what is that going to do to the topography?
Doesn't do anything. Topography doesn't change in that area. So there's just the sand, the natural sea horizon is deeper than thought.
Yeah.
So when you rebuild the system, you just need to build it back up with porous materials. The system's still going to be, a foot to 2 feet of cover max over the septic system.
That was my concern, is how much cover.
Yep.
Okay.
So it'll be built per Title V. Title V only allows a maximum of 3 feet over the system. So it'll still be a shallow system, few feet below grade. They'll just have to remove more fill down to the natural sea horizon and build it back up. So, and just so you can see here, the water main extension, and there's a hydrant here directly across the street from the building, and that is almost exactly 100 feet from the building. So, the water commissioner in his letter said, obviously, all hydrant locations will be approved prior to installation by the fire department.
So the water line extension's going to be in the center of the road?
It's actually to the south side of the road.
Okay.
You can see these 2 utilities here. This is the high pressure, there's two gas mains, an 8-inch and a 12-inch high pressure gas main that runs along this side of the road all the way down up to Reservoir Road.
Okay.
So they didn't want any installation. This is the landscaped area.
Yep.
The gas department, when we called in DigSafe, actually came to our office and brought plans and sat down with us and made sure our whole installation along the entire route was on the opposite side of the road as the gas.
Yeah, the gas companies tend to be pretty tight with their information. They don't like to share it.
No.
Any questions from any members of the board?
No, I think this is great. I'm glad you guys were accepting of our suggestion and went ahead with the testing, and that alleviates my concerns about, infiltration for the stormwater, roof runoff, and for the septic. And this letter from the Water District satisfies my concern about maybe not having water, and I think that was my concern.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I'm
we,
satisfied as well.
They're
Next.
excited to get water down here because of Four Pond Road for the potential of expansion in the future.
yep. Okay, if there's nothing else and you have nothing to add, then
Nope.
I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing for 225 and 259 Leominster Shirley Road.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Mr. Brenner?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. And Mr. Torgensen?
Aye.
All right. And I for myself.
Excuse me.
Excellent. Congratulations, and thank you.
That was to close the hearing or to approve the project?
That was to close.
Close the
That's
hearing.
what I thought, okay.
Yep.
Got a little ahead of myself.
And we do not have a
You don't have a draft
We don't
decision?
have a draft permit.
Okay.
I mean, you are welcome to deliberate. You can save that for the next meeting when I produce a draft, and then you can deliberate the draft.
I think that probably
That
makes the
makes more
most sense.
Okay.
Mm,
I will say that I am going, and I pulled up the conditions just to try and see if I could find it, but I intend to remove the condition requiring the installation of drainage systems prior to construction, based on the discussion that was had at the last meeting that they can't or won't do the drainage system because it'll be based on the need to have removed the building and be doing that work. I don't think there's any other conditions in here, but if anything pops up that I think needs to be flagged, I'll flag it in the draft that I send out.
Okay. That makes sense. So we are all set.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to our next public hearing, which is for 780 Northfield Road, continued from March 14th. Good evening, Mr. Latanzi.
Good evening, Mr. Cole. If I may start, respectfully, Mr. Cole, if I request you to recuse yourself from this matter under the Mass General Laws, Chapter 268A, conflict of interest regarding a potential or perceived financial interest one way or another. We have a history as in business, and we also own Christmas tree farms on the same road, which could easily be perceived as a conflict of interest.
I don't see it that way. I think I'll participate.
Understood?
My reason being, my Christmas tree farm isn't selling trees and won't be for another 10 years. So whatever perceived financial impact this has, doesn't really apply if you're not selling trees. It's hard to compete with somebody who isn't selling something. I appreciate your concern,
Understood.
but under the circumstances, I don't think it's an issue. So. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, following up from our last meeting, we had requested a site walk, to which we met last Monday, a little after 5, closer to 5:30. I have since updated and sent a plan in with proper measurements from the wall boundary from the Borderlace property, showing that the width of the driveway, it starts from 49 feet from the neighbor's boundary. There is an existing barway showing, there's a removal of the wall, it's 9 feet wide, showing where the original farm driveway would have been entering from Northfield Road onto the farm located there at 780 Northfield. I'm requesting at that point the removal of 40 feet of stone wall. I know at the site visit you had requested yourself, Mr. Cole, that I only remove 30 feet, not 40, which there's, and of the 40 feet of stone wall, it would make it safer from coming from a narrower roadway entering onto Northfield Road to have swing room with big equipment, which is what we operate. And that's why I'm here in the first place, is over the safety issue. You had requested 30 feet. In looking at it, I really think that I need the full 40 feet of wall removal, and the overall being 49 feet wide between the existing barway and then an additional 40 feet to the northeast direction. There are 3 trees that also I'm looking to remove, one of which is dead and standing dead now. There's 1 hickory and 1 oak. At the site walk, you were okay with the hickory to be removed, the dead tree, and the 1 oak is in that last 10-foot section of which I'm interested in having removed. You had suggested that we leave it. Given the height of those branches on that corner, the way that tree sits, it's an obstacle for, and would, block equipment, trucks, hay wagons from entering on that portion of the driveway. So even if we were to choke the driveway down, that wall removal down 10 feet, that tree is still an obstacle. And so that's why I'm really looking to keep my, I obviously, upon further investigation, we're not removing 50 feet of wall, only removing 40. You had suggested that 30 was the max that had ever been approved. If you might recall, 2 weeks ago tonight, you approved a 40-foot stone wall removal on Lancaster Ave for me without a site walk. So I'm for the design of the driveway for farm equipment, I really would like to stick with that request that I proposed in front of you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I missed the site walk, but I did happen to go out and take a walk and look at everything that you had marked, and I appreciate that you marked everything. I'd really like to understand why you need the 50 feet, because I have the same concern. A roadway isn't that wide. I'm trying to understand the turning radius that you need for the equipment that you have.
So when I put a tractor, a hay baler, and a hay wagon together, the entire rig is upwards of 80 feet in length. And so when you turn this big equipment, the turning radius is quite large, significantly larger than anything else that really goes down the road. And of course, this is why I'm here in the first place, is because the oversized equipment to go between farms, I'm really trying to avoid the intersection of Route 13. So I do have, if I was to travel onto Route 13 and then onto West Townsend Road, the entrance over there is significantly larger and wider, but
It is, but the opening itself, the parking area in front of that opening is probably 50 feet, because I went there too. Mm-hmm. But when you get into that driveway, that turning radius isn't 50 feet the whole way.
You're correct, it's not the entire way, but you also have a much wider approach coming from West Townsend Road into the driveway. So you have where Northfield Road is maybe 30 feet wide, directly across from my driveway, you have a much wider access. So when you swing wide, you need a narrower point to aim through. Given that Northfield is not that wide, when you swing in or swing out, you need significant, you need more space. You either need a wide road and a narrow entrance, or a narrow road and a wide entrance.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, am I allowed to speak now or no? I'm sorry.
We'll get through this portion of the meeting and address the board's concerns, and then open it up if you would like to public comment. Just to pick up on Mr. Latanzi's point about the approval that we granted at our last hearing, that was a much different situation. Each one of these scenic road applications can only be viewed as an individual application. Each set of circumstances is different. On Lancaster Ave, you had a much larger existing opening that you were moving, and it is, simply put, a hayfield. There's no infrastructure, there's no roads. So it's, from my point of view, it's a much more simple application in that there's a sole purpose to that opening, and that is to go in and access a hayfield. It is not something where you are growing Christmas trees, where you're open to the public, where you have large amounts of equipment coming and going for farm operations. It's the few times a year that you cut the hay in the field and haul it out. And I completely understand your goal in terms of having viable access, but we're here tonight to address the scenic road aspect of things, and unfortunately, Northfield Road in particular, especially that section, has seen a lot of these applications, and the more openings you create, the less Stonewall is left. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. The other thing that weighs on my mind with this situation is that land has been in agricultural production for quite some time and has existing viable access. So this isn't an application to create access or improve upon access that's already there. It's entirely new access. And so I think we're just, from my standpoint, we're trying to strike a balance and realize that you have some concerns about safety. And so I understand where you're coming from in terms of wanting to create another entrance or egress from your property. But at the same time, you have viable access that has worked for large equipment for many, many years. And to my knowledge, there's never been a safety concern with any activities coming from that area.
If I may point out that clearly the farm ownership has changed. The direction and access of equipment has changed. The equipment that was on the farm has stayed on the farm. We're diversifying the operation, including where I've already seeded things down into hay. We have hay equipment to run back and forth. That's really my largest concern. And absolutely, it is a safety issue onto Route 13.
Yep.
So I understand you saying, well, it used to work, it worked fine before, why doesn't it work now? Well, very clearly, it won't work now because of the direction from which we're traveling in this change in ownership. So I'm here on a safety issue. Until we have traffic lights at Northfield and Route 13, I'm deeply concerned trying to operate my farm, keeping this town a farming community, and the last thing I would want is an accident. And then to remember that the planning board didn't want us to have a safe access.
I wouldn't characterize it as that. I don't think any member of this board has represented to you that we have any intention of denying the application. It's a question of magnitude.
Understood.
We just approved an application for you. So, any other questions or comments?
I have a procedural question, Mr. Chair, just in terms of, I live fairly close to this particular location on Northfield. I just wanted to verify, I don't have any financial stake other than I happen to live and own a house nearby. I don't believe I'm required to recuse myself in this case, but I just wanted to
You're well outside what would be the expected radius.
Okay, super. I have a question in terms of, I couldn't be there for the site walk. In terms of the I apologize. In terms of the stonewall removal, are there areas where the stone wall is more broken down in that particular location that could be used and rebuilt with the
So if you
quantity
look
of
at
stone wall?
the plan that was submitted,
Yeah.
49 feet from the corner is the first segment of wall. That wall will remain. The next 9-foot segment is the portion that's currently being referred to as the barway and does not have wall there now.
Okay.
And then, so the opening overall would be 49 or 50 feet, removing roughly 40 feet of wall and using the existing opening as in the wall.
Okay, I understand that now. Thank you.
So, any other questions from the board at this point? I'd like to open it up for public comment. Mr. Torgensen, do you have anything you would like to add?
I have nothing else to add.
Okay. So if you'd like to step forward, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Nancy Fosciasco, and I live at 146 West Townsend Road. My concerns are this. I would like to understand from your committee or from Mr. Latanzi exactly what that property is going to be used for. And the reason I'm asking that is in 2018 and before, there was a lot of dirt that was taken out of that earth removal. And through that earth removal, I think Adam can remember me calling several times, there was a lot of issues with pollution, with air quality, with the dust. I don't want to see anyone, including West Townsend Road, going through this again. So when I say that, I guess my question to this committee, and maybe to Mr. Latanzi, is do you in this town go with the EPA template, which is the SWPPP, which is that each time that you're putting together some residential area, that you are looking at that pollution plan of bringing things in and bringing things out as far as that earth removal, number one. Now, I heard Mr. Latanzi say that he's going to bring his farm equipment in. When you go off of West Townsend Road and you open up those gates, which I'm not understanding why that gate has been there for years, because that road is not part of you, meaning Mr. Pierce never owned that road. That is, from my understanding, from Verizon, they allow him to use that road. What I would like to request is that road is paved. because of the fact that the dust is unbelievable at certain times of the year. And if it wasn't for Mr. Powell that helped with the process of that earth removal, and it's my understanding you are going to start removing earth, is that correct?
Excuse me?
Are you going to start?
I don't know where this is coming from.
If
Okay.
you could just direct your
Okay.
concerns.
So it's my understanding, again, it's my understanding that there's more earth removal that's going to be taken out of this place. I don't want to see the other road have the same dealings, Northfield Road, that we've had on our side. We were never told this. We never were shown that this was going to happen, the abutters. And my fear is, again, the same thing's going to happen. What my suggestion is, and again, it's probably going to be difficult or to do, but go off 13, go in between by a road that Danny already has there beside his house, and I believe it's by his garage, is go down through that. That's an easier way in. You make it wide enough that you can get your tractor equipment in there, and you take it off Chase Road.
But ma'am, I do not own that piece of property.
But maybe that's something that you can, again, that's just my suggestion. I just really, as being a taxpayer here, by being on the cemetery commission here, this town is very dear to me. And I really would like to see that people stand up and do what the right thing is. And that's what I'm asking here, is if you will, again, look into this, tell me that this isn't going to happen with any down the future, that would be wonderful. And anything that I can do for you regarding this would be very well appreciated in your side and also on mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of many of those concerns, we are simply here tonight for the scenic road aspect of things. And I certainly appreciate where you're coming from, and I would be happy to point you to the right direction for those concerns. Earth removal is permitted by the Board of Selectmen, so you would have to approach them with any concerns related to earth removal for this project or any other project in town. And that's where most of that lies. Planning Board does issue stormwater permits, so depending on the situation, when somebody disturbs more than an acre of ground, they do need to come to us for the stormwater permit, but that doesn't always apply depending on the nature of the work that's being done, so.
So can I ask simply, in this town, do you go by the EPA, which is the SWAPP, that each thing you do is definitely looked at by yourself, looked at by the selectmen?
Yep.
Well, we actually have a local earth removal. We have a local stormwater bylaw. So disturbances greater than 1 acre require a stormwater permit. Disturbances less than 1 acre that are individualized and not part of a larger common development pattern do not require a stormwater permit. They're not permitted to shed water and sediment, but they're not required to be permitted if they're less than 43,560 square feet.
Okay. So can I ask this board again, this committee, what is this land going to be used for?
That's up to the owner of the property to determine that. Currently it's in agricultural production, and it seems as though Mr. Latanzi has represented.
But this isn't agricultural. I called the state today. This is not an agricultural, from my understanding, it is not at this point in time.
You may be referring to the EPR program, which is completely different. This land, to my knowledge, was going to be enrolled, but that never came to fruition. So the land is currently enrolled in Chapter 61A, which is a tax status for agricultural land.
It's not enrolled in.
Correct. Yeah.
But the activities that have previously been conducted and everything we've heard this evening indicate that it is an agricultural property from a use description. So they are producing agriculture. They are growing items. under the state's definition in 40A Section 3, the activities on the parcel are considered agriculture. So while it may not be in the agricultural preservation restriction, the use on the property is agriculture. And so that's the previous use, that's the existing use, so it's just a continuation of that use.
Then if that was true, then why was there so much earth removal coming out of there for X amount of years?
Again, I think that's
Board
a
of
question that
Selectmen
was never
question.
answered. There are exemptions from certain laws for, that go in hand with agriculture, and the preparation of fields, the expansion or maintenance of agriculture areas that permit certain things to be done. And I know at the time,
Don't you think the abutter should have known that at that point in time when that was being done?
So she needs to come to the mic.
Excuse me,
And again, I think we're
excuse me,
getting-
I'm sorry, this is a point of order right now. This is the public scenic road hearing.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Can we
And,
talk
well-
about the scenic road and not about what's gone on in the past?
Sure.
And previous owner probably even?
Well, and I think that's exactly, there was never a formal answer. There was a lot of speculation about what happened, and it was all done post. This is something that, from an earth removal perspective, would need to be handled by the select board through their process. And if the current owner were to want to do something like that in the future, he would need to work through the select board on that.
Well, all I'm saying is, this road where we're talking about, we're not going to put up with this again. I'm not going to have dust again,
Well, and I certainly appreciate your concerns.
especially for the pollution and the EPA.
It's not threatening.
But again, we are here for the scenic road, which is the stone wall, the opening, and the trees that are in the right of way.
That road has the same issues that went West Townsend Road, Linton Road.
Yep. Well, and I appreciate your concerns.
And thank you, Chairman, for letting me speak.
You're welcome.
You do have a public comment on Zoom.
Zoom. Mr. Alonso, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak in the public hearing part of this in support of the applicant's request for the opening of the scenic road, notwithstanding the idea that obviously it's protected, the road, and under the care and jurisdiction of the planning board. I think the safety issues that the applicant brings up, given the use of the designation of the property as agricultural land and Lunenburg being a right to farm community. My understanding is that the difference asking for and what the applicant is asking for is in effect 10 feet of stone wall. I think anything that I take Mr.
40
Pansy
feet.
at the word that the turning radius needed because of the width of Northfield Road makes it a different scenario than his current entrances. And also, I think that keeping those vehicles off of Chase Road, which from a select board point of view has been problematic with traffic and traffic speeds, et cetera, would be a good thing for him and for everyone else on the road. Again, I see there's only 2 trees that he's talking about removing, one of them, the third tree being a dead tree. And from the safety perspective, I think it's worth authorizing the access that he's asking for in order to keep those vehicles off two streets with a decent turn, especially if he's talking about coming back and forth between properties, because left-hand turn onto New West Townsend Road and into the existing driveway would certainly be problematic depending on how frequent they are. So I do support his request in his application.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso. And just to clarify, the existing opening is 10 feet. The proposal is to open up 50 feet. So
To remove
using 10
40.
feet and removing an additional 40 feet, just so we're clear.
I understand, but I thought what I heard is that you, the board, or at least a member or two of the board, suggested changing that 40-foot to 30-foot. So really the difference between the applicant and what is the planning board is, we're
Okay.
talking about 10 feet. That's all I was referring to.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board?
I don't have any, but I didn't know if Mr. Latanzi wanted to add anything. Did you want to add anything?
Real quick, I'm sorry to meet my new neighbor here under this. If I can clarify a couple of things, and I believe the board knows this. The farm is in 61A, which is designated as agricultural land. I am continuing to carry on farming as it has been done for decades there. We plan to put all of our energy into this property to farm. That is the full and only intent. I do not have any intention of earth removal. I don't know where that speculation is coming from. I'm here to farm. So again, I'd be happy to talk plans and strategy, and I'm looking here as a new neighbor to be a good neighbor. And of course, having multiple entrances in and out of the property makes traffic less in any one particular. So, I mean, I'm here for that. But again, I'd be happy to talk on the side afterwards and introduce myself. But either way, I think we have a good understanding of what I'm here for. So, thank you.
I guess my only real concern is the scope, so to speak. As I said earlier, I'm concerned about the overall width. Mr. Allison and I visited the site on the site visit, and as we're laying out the tape and trying to figure out how everything was laid out, it seemed to me that a 40-foot opening, as we approved on Lancaster Ave, would suffice. The wall does sit back about 10 feet from the road, so theoretically, if the opening is 40 feet, at the curb, you could have a 50-foot wide opening and, taper it in. But that's really up to Mr. Latanzi and DPW. I don't know, did we get any feedback from DPW? I know at the...
We did not before. I mean, I know that I had an off-the-cuff conversation with the former DPW director, and he said from a tree perspective, he didn't see an issue with the requested removal.
Okay.
It was, as Mr. Latanzi said, one of them is definitely dead, and the other two he felt weren't going to have a demonstrable impact on the roadway.
I guess my primary concern would be from a road access standpoint, if there was anything, if he wanted a paved apron or drainage or curbing or...
He's always going to want to ensure, and he's not here any longer, but any DPW director is going to want to ensure that the driveway isn't shedding significant amounts of water off onto the roadway. At a minimum, I would expect it would need to be a 6- apron to prevent washout and to let the water not sheet off of it as opposed to like a graded base. Obviously, pavement is always preferable because it supports the side of the roadway, but you can tend to do that with trap rock easy enough.
Now, does that all come under the driveway permit that's issued by the, who
Yes.
Issues the driveway?
The driveway permit is issued, currently it's issued by the building department.
Okay.
There were the beginnings of discussions with the previous DPW director about creating driveway standards and shifting that permitting to the DPW, which
Okay.
is a logical place for it. In most communities, that's how it works. For whatever reason, at some point, the building department in Lunenburg was given that as part of the building permit process. There isn't a fee for a driveway permit. It's usually done in conjunction with a building permit. It seems It doesn't seem efficient that way, because often the DPW director will have comments about driveways. Both police and fire review them fairly regularly for site distance and access concerns, and all of that could be codified into a driveway standard, which would be better served as part of the DPW, but, we clearly didn't get there in the short time that he was here.
Yeah. And we don't have any feedback from the building commissioner.
We do not.
Mr. Latanzi, have you applied for a driveway permit?
I have not yet.
Okay. All right.
Clearly
So-
pending approval here, so
Yep.
step one.
Well, I think the only hurdle is going to be on the administration end. I don't know who's issuing those permits for DPW, but,
Well, there isn't a driveway permit for DPW.
okay. All right, so the
So
building
Building-
commissioner.
the building
We
inspector
never
will
got
do
to the point
Okay.
where we had decided that
So-
there were standards and it would make sense. So it's
Okay.
issued through the building department. The building inspector is essentially going to send the request out to the police and fire chiefs and the DPW director, which I believe at this point would probably fall to the highway superintendent to review for adequacy of construction, because, we're not really talking about anything substantial. I mean, we are, but it's not a Walmart or something that is going to have significant traffic flow. So it would really just be a matter of making sure the road was supported appropriately.
I have a question on that. So you say it's a non-feed permit that is issued in conjunction with the building permit?
Often,
Often, not always?
not always. I mean, it can be issued individually.
So it is a standalone?
It is a standalone
Okay,
permit.
that was
There's
my
just no
question.
fee for it
was my
because it was often intended that it would be tied together with a building permit.
Right.
Well, in most situations, you're building a house or some sort
Yeah,
of
you'd be
structure.
surprised how often people come in and want to move their driveway, add a driveway, and it's confusing where there aren't standards, and so
All right.
hence our conversations.
How does this work in terms of site plan approval?
I don't believe that this triggers any of the thresholds for site plan approval. There's no change in use on the site. There's no expansion of parking. There's no building construction in conjunction with it. The one thing that potentially would come up would be the stormwater permit.
just
If
gonna
there
say,
were an
that was the
acre of
question.
disturbance. I know that currently on the site, there are a number of existing roadways. And so if this were a matter of, connecting some of these existing roadways, or there were already a roadway and what was done was more formalizing and regrading as opposed to actual disturbance of the earth, then we get into a really fine point on whether it's a stormwater permit or not.
Well, this is one of my questions. I don't have any problems with the 3 trees. And honestly, I would prefer it to be 40 feet, but if it has to be 50 feet, it has to be 50 feet, if that's what you need for your equipment. But there's a number of trees that have to be cut to make this roadway. And I'm wondering how much land area, and I'm assuming you're gonna have to do some grading, because there is some wet area out there. So I'm wondering how much disturbance do you think you're gonna do to put this road in?
Maximum of about 50 feet wide, straight through.
But do you know how far it's gonna go back from where?
It's roughly 225 feet. If you're familiar with the property, it's hard to see, but there is a clearing on the back side of this wall. I can try and scale it for you on my
That's
phone to
okay,
show you.
that's
But
okay.
it's not,
It's 11,000
it's actually,
square feet.
It's 11,000
actually
square
quite-
feet?
Say 12, which is a
Okay.
quarter acre.
yeah,
Okay.
quarter of an acre.
Okay.
My-
I mean, it sounds like he's not even like tipping onto it. If
Right,
he said,
right, he's far
if the
under
numbers
it.
he gave us came out to 30, I'd suggest that he might want to have a surveyor really dial that in for him so he can be sure.
Well, I'm sorry, again, to do point of order, but I mean, this really is none of our business at this point. We are simply looking at the right-of-way and the trees and the stone wall.
And
That's it. I don't know why all these other questions are coming up. I really don't.
Well,
Well-
with all due respect, Mr. Allison, I think you've asked very similar questions about projects, you know, about things that aren't necessarily our jurisdiction, but they do inform the process. And before, in my opinion, before this board issues a scenic road permit to create an opening, there needs to be an understanding that the rest of the project is all going to come together as we've discussed it. I mean, I don't think anybody would want to approve opening up 50 feet of wall only to find out that, oh, the road's not going to get cut in and we just have this opening that we created to no man's land. Like,
I would
It's just-
completely agree with you, and I think that from an applicant standpoint, if I would want to know if I'm standing before the planning board with a scenic road permit and the planning board knows or thinks that I'm going to need a stormwater permit, personally, I would prefer to hear that at the time that I'm at the hearing, so I know that going in.
Been told that numerous times, and honestly, when I grill people,
Well,
it's
I
usually...
didn't know that.
Okay. When I grill people, it's a corporate developer coming in out of town to develop lots for housing, that whatever. This is not that case. This is not that case at all. And I think you'll notice also, when we do have an individual homeowner come to us, I don't grill them that much. I just ask them simple questions, and I also do try to tell them, look, that's nothing to do with our permit process right now, right here, but in the future, this is at your peril. And I think if you review my comments and input for as long as you've been here and whenever, that's been consistent. This is an individual landowner on an individual parcel farming, and this is a big reason that we are losing farms in this town.
Well, with all due respect, I don't think Mr. Latanzi has gotten any more scrutiny than anybody else in the scenic road process. You know, and I take exception with the comment that says we're going to grill a developer. In my mind, it doesn't matter if it's a single homeowner, a farmer, a developer, or a real estate tycoon. Everybody comes here and they should all get treated equally.
Minds are different.
And I have a lot of respect for Mr. Latanzi and his agricultural operation. And yes, it is a farm, but this is not APR land. So at any point in the future, something could change and this land could easily be developed. So in my mind, while I completely support farming, I don't think that farming should just get a blank check with all of this stuff unless you're talking about APR land. That's a completely different set of circumstances because that land is protected and will not be developed. But there's no reason there's nothing that says that this access road couldn't be the next 40B project.
This
down the
land
road.
this land is also protected through the chapter program, and if this does come into the future to be developed, then the town gets first right of refusal. So
Unless the land comes out. But again, we're getting a little bit off track, as
topic.
you've
Of course,
pointed out a
I
couple of
understand.
times.
Well,
Let's
this-
get back to the scenic road portion of things. Does anybody else have anything to add? I think the underlying issue is the width. You know, I'm concerned about the width. I'm much more comfortable with the same 40 feet that we approved at Lancaster Ave. I do respect Mr. Latanzi's concerns about safely accessing this, but in my mind, the 40 feet is 40 feet that he doesn't have now. It's a second means to get in and out of the property, as opposed to, I believe it's only one entrance you have now. And at the road, it can be wider as long as DPW, building commissioner, whoever, doesn't have any issues. You know, to give you a point of reference, the rear entrance to the middle high school curb to curb is 35 feet wide, roughly, according to the GIS, and when it fans out to the road, it's 60 feet, roughly, as accurate as GIS can be.
On Oak Ave?
On Oak Ave.
Yeah,
Yep,
I mean,
the
I would
rear
say that's
entrance.
probably
Yep.
within a couple of feet of reasonable.
And I just mention that as a point of reference, because I know sometimes it can be hard to get a good understanding of how big these openings are.
Well, you actually had it staked, I think, when you had it, the opening itself staked, when I went out there. So it was easy to visualize the amount of opening. You know, I understand the concern about not coming out onto Chase Road. That is a terrible intersection, so I can understand that. You know, while I would prefer that it would be 40 feet, I'm not going to withhold my approval to make it 40 feet. If you're saying you need 50 feet from a farm perspective, then I'm okay with approving that.
I'm in the position where, I mean, echoing what some others have said, I'm not thrilled with 50 feet. I'm not thrilled with that big of a cutout on a scenic road, because anything we lose on a scenic road, we don't get back. I mean, every time we approve something on a scenic road, it becomes less of a scenic road. That said, I hear what seemed to me to be legitimate safety concerns about getting heavy equipment, heavy slow equipment specifically on Chase Road, and I'm not going to even pretend that I have functional knowledge on the effective turning radius of farm equipment. I have to, excuse me. You're going to get a lot of those water interruptions from me now while speaking. I have to take Mr. Lieutenancy at his word that if that's what the equipment needs, that's what the equipment needs. I'd love it if in the process, while they're kind of doing it, excuse me, I would love it if in the process they found out, maybe we could not quite take as much wall out, that would just be done out of goodwill, as well as good business sense. Any rock you don't have to move is energy you don't have to spend, is gas you don't have to buy. But I'm not going to hold back my approval based on that, because I don't have the knowledge to say that's a bad move.
Yep. Mr. Torgensen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't.
Well, I think with that, we're ready to vote. Anything you would like to add? Okay.
Close the hearing first.
I move that we close the hearing.
All those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
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 Mr. Torgensen?
Aye.
And I for myself.
Aye.
All right.
You ready for a motion?
I would be happy to entertain a motion, Mr. Allison.
I would move that we approve the scenic road plan for 780 Northfield Road as presented.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Mr. Torgensen? And I for myself. Not sure why we get the echo. Excellent. You're all set, Mr. Latanzi.
Thank you.
Saying it twice. Oh, okay.
So I think I froze up at a meeting last week and I had to say aye like 10 times.
Like Max Headroom.
Aye. No, it wasn't quite like that, but
My agenda. All right. Moving on to decisions. 1255 Lancaster Ave.
Did you send that to us?
I believe Marjorie included it in the, yeah, it was in the
Oh, okay. Okay.
Have we done this before, Adam?
have we done what before?
Had a decision of something for the scenic road?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I try to just keep everything consistent, so decisions are decisions are decisions.
Okay.
I mean, outside of waivers or de minimis change, which we just issue a letter.
So are you gonna have one original, or?
Yeah, I've got one original right here. I mean,
Now,
you can-
this one we didn't have a plan for, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We had a nice picture of the oak tree he wanted to take down.
Yep. Okay, and the stones removed for the new entrance will be used to close off
Correct.
the old driveway. I think that was the only
Yeah.
condition we had.
It's essentially a swap driveway for driveway.
Yep. Oh, that's the, okay.
Yeah, we do it single-sided so that it's easier to record.
Ah, all right.
They don't like double-sided.
And this we've already voted to approve, so we're
Correct, you
just
voted at
signing.
the last meeting, so you just need
Okay.
to sign it.
Does anybody have anything to add to 1255 Lancaster Ave?
I have one question, though.
Okay.
Under the plans,
Yep.
the very last sentence in that paragraph says, "The stones removed for the new driveway would be used to close off the old driveway."
Yes.
Yes, and that was a
No.
discussion.
I understand that, but would it be more specific to say rebuild the opening in the exist,
Yeah.
rather than just close off? Because closing off could mean just a pile of stones.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, and that's just my,
It's kind of what the wall is anyway, but I take your point.
but it's got some order to
Yeah, but, yeah. I would agree.
So would be used to
Reconstruct the wall and the
Reconstruct
existing
stone
opening.
wall.
reconstruct.
Let
this
me
one.
open it and I'll write and then I'll read it to you and you can tell me if it's good.
All right.
If you want to look at the other one while you're,
Yep.
Yeah, I have an issue with the other one.
you have an issue with the other one? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, then we're gonna have to wait, because I'll have to open that one too. So. So the stones removed from the new driveway, removed for the new driveway, would be used to rebuild the stone wall at the location of the old driveway.
Sounds good to me.
That sounds good. Excellent.
Bear with me while I open the other one. Oh, is Unitil a snowflake, and do they have their own?
What was your concern with this one, Mrs. Bertram?
I just, rather than saying, and I guess even on this one, did you say will or would
Where?
on the one for Lancaster Ave?
Meaning the stones will?
Yeah, because I guess that's my question, is that was a stipulation, and these aren't really worded as stipulations?
Fair enough.
And that's my same problem with the Unitil one, regarding the removal of the trees. And the reason I bring that up is, we had a situation years ago where they cut a whole bunch of trees and just left them on the side of the road, and I don't want that to happen again.
You clearly don't burn wood for heat.
I used to. I don't anymore, but I did.
So any trees taken down will be removed?
From the site,
Yeah. Because we've learned shall is not good enough.
right.
I was going to say, which word got kicked out of the English language?
It didn't get kicked out.
Well, in terms of attorneys, I guess.
Yeah. That's not really the English language.
So I guess I want the stipulations after the motion. Because we really made them with the stipulation.
Well, you didn't make the motion for Mr. Latanzi contingent. You didn't add a condition on Lancaster Ave.
We didn't?
No. He stated during the hearing that he will do that,
Okay.
but you did not. So memorializing it in the decision will do that.
Okay.
Because the discussion of it was in the decision.
Okay.
For Unitil, you did condition those two items.
Okay.
So at this point, we're just going to update the language under the plan section.
On 1255, yes.
Yep.
Yep.
I've got to print it again because I printed it double-sided. Should burn through the town's paper.
Anything else we want to address as part of this decision? All right.
So that's Unitil. No, you don't want to sign the top one, because that's the
Okay.
one that has the shalls in it, or the wills.
Wills. And I don't have to sign twice. It's
No, this is a one of.
one and done.
Yep.
Your pen, Mr. Allison.
Oh, I have Tanner's, thank you.
All right.
Are these fans on higher than they usually are?
Yeah,
I think so.
It seems tough tonight.
No, that's the wind
this
blowing
one?
through the building.
No.
I don't
Can't
sign
have
anything tonight.
Okay.
Not unlikely.
Good to see you.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item, board discussion on zoning infrastructure and the master plan. This was added to the agenda at the request of Mr. Allison and is a little bit of a follow-up to some of the discussion we had at our last meeting during board comments and concerns. So, Mr. Allison, if you would like to
Yes, thank you.
start the discussion.
I looked at the agenda and thought it was a little late, and we had briefly discussed this at our previous meeting, and considering, have we heard yet back from the state on that 40B?
So, the town manager got an email week, 10 days, 2 weeks ago, that they were having trouble opening the attachment, which was the town's response.
What?
And so she made sure she got them the response, but they were just starting to look at it.
Okay.
She expected that, or she inferred, or was told, we'd hear in 2 weeks or so. We have not heard to my knowledge. So perhaps they opened it and said, oh, there's actually some substantial comments here. We need to take a better, closer look at it. I don't know.
So after 6 months, they couldn't open the attachment
I think after 6 months, they finally decided to try and open the
and
attachment.
realized they couldn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had talked
It's a
to,
lot, Massachusetts.
well, I had talked to a private engineer who had come in with a client about something else, and he had asked me about it, and I mentioned that we still hadn't heard. He said, yeah, I've heard they're 6 to 9 months out. So when that other story was relayed to me, I said, okay, so this is all starting to sort of fall into place together. So I can't even begin to speculate at this point when we would hear.
Okay. No, I guess then, I mean, the focus here was that is pending to extend the water and the sewer considerable, 2 or 3 miles beyond where it currently exists. And now that we've got 6 to 9 months, apparently, to look forward to it, we can have further discussions about the desire, the interest, the abilities, how it could be done, why it, I was going to say should, but I'm not going to do that. There's precedent set for having the sewer extended without, can you help me out on the terminology there? Like the trailer park, from the new primary to trailer
So
park.
without expanding the sewer service area and doing it to serve an individual, we'll call it a development, I guess. And that project, though, was an environmentally sensitive issue as opposed to a facilitation of development issue. And that was done because those individual trailers and the ability to install Title V systems for each of those existing mobile homes was not going to be feasible. And the cost of installing, maintaining, monitoring a large septic system, as you find at the Village at Flat Hill or the Woodlands, was going to
It was
be
in failure.
prohibitive.
The existing system was in failure.
Yeah, and
the water supply was not sufficient for the people that were living there.
Okay, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with why it was done, but I wanted to get clarification on, like, usually when you run sewer down a road, then everybody gets better and everybody can access it.
But I think that was done as a special act. And so the line that was installed was not installed in a way that would functionally service anyone else, and it was done wholly at the cost of the trailer park.
Okay,
So there's there are a few individual homes that have similar situations where they paid to install a long individual sewer connection to a main that doesn't serve any other property.
I guess I'm just looking for 2 different words to refer to the same thing where everybody on the line is accessed versus nobody but the end user is accessed. How can I call those different things?
Public and private, really.
A public and a private?
A public sewer line and a private sewer line.
Okay, so we're looking at potentially a possibly 3-mile-ish long private sewer line in the public right-of-way.
Potentially.
In the public right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can't be outside the public right-of-way.
Correct.
So it's going to be on the town's property.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, of course, the cost of it is going to be a huge issue, a discussion point, but I would like to just get the question out, if this 3-mile plus or minus private line is to be forced on us, which is quite possible, how could we, or do we want to, look at the additional expense to make that a fully serviced sewer line?
That's a sewer commission question.
It is, and I think from a like 10,000 foot process, the way that I understand it is if it were a private line, the installation cost would be wholly out of the pocket of the developer, and thus would prevent any other connections to. And if it were going to be a public line, you would probably be required to meet the betterment standards for the people who would be along that line. And correct me if I'm mistaken, I thought it was 75% in favor in order to do the betterment.
So,
They do a survey, they provide an estimated cost, and those folks decide whether or not they would be willing to take that on, because what happens is once it becomes public, every property that has frontage is assessed for how many buildable lots it has, or how many betterments it would viably have, and that gets divided equally amongst all of those numbers, and those folks are charged that over
With
a
everyone
period of
on
time.
everyone on the line.
Yes, everyone on the line, whether they hook up or not.
Right. As for whether or not it would be public or private, I think that remains to be seen. I think that's going to be up to the sewer commission. I know, and I haven't really interacted directly with this sewer commission, but I know many years ago when we were looking for the extension for the development behind Walmart, we at that time said it would be conditional upon having the ability for other people to tie into the line. So, whether or not that's still on the table, but I know that's how we approved it previously.
And I think that development is slightly different than this one because it was a for-profit.
Right, but
You
I'm
know-
just saying, in their negotiations
Yes.
with the developer,
Correct.
they can figure out whether
Yes,
or
they
not how
can.
they want to do that.
And
how
I
they
think
can
this
negotiate.
situation is not necessarily going to be a negotiation, which is where.
Well, we don't know.
We don't,
Let's be a little bit optimistic.
I think through the function of the comprehensive permit process,
Right.
there's the ability to say, you know what, we're not going to negotiate. This is what we're demanding. And I'm not saying that that's what will happen, but
So I guess, so the 75% need to agree to it? Is that, I guess that would come after the sewer commission has approved it? Or would it become?
Again, I think it really depends on how the process goes. Typically, if people on a street want to have a sewer extension, again, as Adam said, it would be, 75% of the people would have to sign saying that they want it, and then the betterment would apply to all the properties on the street if the sewer commission agreed to extend it. But is this property even in the sewer district? It's not. So that's the other.
But they can, again, their contention is they can force that through the comp permit, that the
Right.
zoning board has the right to waive.
Right,
So,
and that's one of the points that town council brought up, is that you don't have the authority to waive that. And the other thing is the act of the legislature required for the water.
and the water's a whole nother.
Well, and town meeting would have to approve the expansion of the sewer service area, correct?
Well, that's what that's what town council's assertion was in there, is that this isn't just a bylaw, this is a legislative function of town meeting. It's not like they're waiving the special permit that the planning board could issue that's done through bylaw, which is often comprehensively covered under that permit. And, I think it's just it's a lawyer argument between the two of them, what the CMR that governs comprehensive permits actually had envisioned and covered in its municipal approvals. Technically, town meeting is a function of the municipality, and the approvals issued there, one could argue are covered, and one could argue, no, that's legislative, and it's done.
Well, and the other part of that argument is that we do not process our own sewer. We have
Correct.
to pay another entity.
Yep.
So that's another part of that argument.
When we only have capacity of
Right.
X number of
right.
gallons.
So, and all of that was brought up in the response that town council put
Mm-hmm.
together, which was excellent. So I'm still keeping my fingers crossed.
So I guess to continue on what I'm thinking here is that if if we don't ask the questions beforehand, then we're not going to have time to ask any questions after the fact. So if this is going to be forced on us, I think that the people that are most directly affected would be the people on those roads that could or could not possibly hook up to the sewer. I would think it would behoove us to make it known to them that this could be happening, and it could be useful to you or it could not be useful to you. Either way, you're going to be impacted because the construction is going to go right in front of your house. It's going to dig up the road, it's going to be patched, whatever. But I understand there are so many moving parts. We've got the IMA, the IMA, and the capacity issues. We've got the expense issues, whose expense is it, and but if we don't plan for it, if we don't pre-plan for it, then by the time the state gets back to us and says, yeah, he can do whatever he wants, then we're not going to be able to plan for anything.
Well, and unfortunately, it's a situation that, from my perspective, we are waiting for answers, and it's very difficult to act on something without having a clear picture of what it all looks like. I think the other issue that we've touched upon as part of this discussion, and I'm not trying to sidetrack you from anything that you want to discuss, Mr. Allison, but from more of a higher level would be zoning and master planning issues. Expanding any of the services has a tremendous impact on the development potential of a specific parcel. And so in this case, talking about adding 3 miles of sewer and water, if it's done in such a way that everybody can tie into both of those services, that makes an enormous impact on all of the parcels that are in that area. But at this point, we don't have enough information to really have an intelligent discussion about things. We need to wait for the state to talk about that particular project and see what their approval or denial looks like, and then walk the property through the process, so to speak. But there's other things that I think you could certainly discuss and potentially bring up in terms of lot sizes and numbers of building permits and zoning and single-family, multifamily. There's all kinds of issues that relate to development that aren't dependent on this particular project that's in front of us. And regardless of how this one turns out, there'll be another one.
Right.
It's just a matter of time. I'm not
I
sure.
think it could be a really long time, though.
It could be.
And from a practical perspective, if this were permitted by the state they were given site eligibility, and the zoning board approved it, or they won in court and were given the right to build it, it would carry us over our threshold, even with new housing numbers that are yet to be fully released from census.
Yep.
So, we would have a minimum of 10 years.
Actually, on that topic, Mr. Burney, looking ahead, correct me if I'm wrong, but if memory serves from when I went to the class on 40B, if we do sufficient work in our master plan and then follow through for affordable housing, and then follow through on it. I know you can't, because I know a lot of communities just tried to put stuff in their master plan about affordable housing, didn't do anything, that's not enough. And then follow through on it in a meaningful fashion, we could retain the right to plan our own.
Correct. If we create a housing production plan,
I was just
which we
gonna say
could
it's a housing
we could
production
create out of a housing chapter and a master plan.
We already have one from 2014.
We do, but it's
Expired.
expired.
From
Yeah.
2014, okay.
And once you do that, if you create a 0.5% of affordable housing annually, or 0.75% annually, you get safe harbor for a year or 2 years. The challenge with that is that creation of affordable housing. So what happens is it's not building it, it's approving it. So you have to approve it in that year in order to get that safe harbor. And 0.5% in Lunenburg would be 32 houses or so.
Okay.
Maybe it's closer to 20, but still, and that's affordable units. So that means we would be, in most instances, creating 200 units of housing in such a way that we were triggering our inclusionary bylaw to require someone to build those 20 units of affordable housing. And in theory, it's wonderful. But once you start drilling into the numbers of practicality, and especially when we look at the development pattern that we've seen over the past 10 or more years, where it's not subdivisions, it's not bulks of housing, it's A&R lots, and they're just popping up here, there, and everywhere, and they don't fall into that same strata of how we control it. There are ways to do it. It just gets really challenging if you're not creating larger tracts of housing where you can balance the cost of building an affordable unit with market rate that somebody's going to make their money off of.
Oh, very good. Thank you for the information.
Certainly, and if I remember correctly, we had discussions similar to that when we were going through the housing production.
We did. And I think to your point, Mr. Allison, I think what you're saying makes sense. I think without seeing what mass housing does with the application, it's hard to have some of these conversations. And I think Mr. Cole's correct. There are other things that can be looked at and sort of acted on or planned upon. And I also think a lot of that all is part and parcel of the master plan. And it's all how that master plan ties together. So I think getting that RFP out as soon after town meeting is reasonable, and really starting that process, it might shed light on some of these conversations that you want to have, informed by the stuff that Mr. Cole was talking about, and potentially all prior to a comp permit actually being filed. Because even if we get notice in 2 weeks from mass housing, there's still all that back-end engineering work that needs to get done to actually make the site permittable. And that can take a long time.
As long as we've been waiting.
One would think,
Quite
but
possibly,
yeah.
yeah, so
And you know, Mr. O'Brien is more than happy to spend his money trying to get development here, but also I don't think he's going to spend his money without knowing that he has a reasonable chance of getting a payback on it. I wouldn't expect he spent the last 6 months paying engineers to work on this without knowledge that the state has said, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
But
Well, I guess I just wanted to bring it up to everybody here that I personally think it's a good idea to start talking about this now.
Mhm.
And we have, so, thank you.
Certainly. And if there's any aspects of these issues that we can discuss and go through that don't rely on information that we're waiting on, then by all means. But it's certainly good to talk about it and have it on the radar, so to speak. So, all right, moving on to minutes approval. Everyone taking a look at the minutes? Any comments on anything?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of March 14th, 2022. Do you want me to do these all individual, or?
We can do
all
them
at once?
together.
all the minutes of 3/14/22, the regular minutes, the minutes for 225 and 259 Leominster Shirley Road, the minutes for 780 Northfield Road, the minutes for 1255 Lancaster Avenue, and the minutes for the Unitil Reliability Project.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
I'll abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Torgensen?
Aye.
And I for myself. Committee reports. Lunenburg Municipal Design Committee.
All right,
Mr.
so
Allison.
we met last Monday, and it was a very interesting meeting. Mr. Jamie Toll wow,
McDonald.
David McDonald and Jamie Toll, previous members of the Building Reuse Committee, were there, and they gave us a fairly lengthy and detailed iteration of their experiences and understandings of the 5 to 7 years that they had spent previously. We had a long discussion about the vertex and the various studies that have been done. We decided to break up into groups and look at the Ritter, the Town Hall, and,
TCP.
no, I don't think, I guess, the Ritter Town Hall and TCP, individually to see, look through the previous assessments and see what we can do now for reasonable amounts of money to gain the most benefit. So that's where we're at. We're gonna try to meet, every other one Monday, I believe, opposite of our meetings here, so.
Excellent. AgCom.
AgCom, we had another good meeting, primarily focused around the market. The resounding no for the every other Sunday came through in the survey we did of the vendors, which was, I was happy about, because I think that a lot of good points were made that it would be quite disruptive to the attendance and not a good thing. But I had asked for the reasoning for it, and it was simply a logistics issue with the managers, and I said, not a problem, I'll cover you, just to make sure that that issue had been addressed. We've got at least 15 vendors already. We've got, I believe it's 6/12, so we're gonna start the second Sunday of June, and we're gonna go through the second Sunday of August, I believe.
Oh, August or October?
October, maybe October. I don't know. Yeah.
Because usually you guys wrap up in October.
Okay.
with-
Yeah, well, it's going to be
Pumpkins.
15. There's going to be 15 total. We are
Yeah.
going to skip the 3rd of July
It makes sense.
for obvious reasons. We're looking at, we've gotten some discussion, we've had some discussions with the Historical Society, potentially having a tent or potentially being open. They've had staffing issues because they'd have to have somebody in the building on Sundays. But they only have office hours once a week anyway, so I think it was good that we asked, and it was received well. I believe there are going to be further discussions about that. I'm going to try to discuss this, the potential of the Lions Club joining us for at least hopefully the first, actually, I'm not going to make any statements because I haven't spoken with them yet, but there is in the works discussions with the Lions Club to also join up with the farmers market in some capacity. So that was about all that meeting was.
Excellent. Stormwater Task Force.
At the last meeting, we talked a bit about getting the public involved more public outreach and education. We're working on an update to the website to make it more interactive and more informative, more user-friendly. We reviewed the status of the CEI contract. Unfortunately, CEI wasn't able to attend, but we did review the contract, and we'll be going back with some questions and some clarifications for CEI. Unfortunately, with the departure of the DPW director who was attending our meetings, a lot of the information that we wanted to be able to obtain, we haven't been able to. We've asked the DPW director to really start tracking time and materials and equipment that's used strictly for stormwater, so we can start to pull that and separate it and really get an understanding of the costs of stormwater. So with the new DPW director, hopefully we'll have the same willingness to cooperate as we had with Rob, and get more information so we can move forward. But we're really just in a getting more information, getting more community involvement right now.
Excellent. Open space.
I don't think we've met since our last meeting. I don't think we've met.
Okay. Capital planning.
Haven't met.
Economic Development Committee.
We met last Thursday, and so mid-April, the survey will be going out. There'll be a press release going to the Ledger for the town-wide edition, as well as a flyer going to the businesses that we have listings for, in order to give them the opportunity to essentially give a status of the business community in town, what things work, what things don't work, what things they'd like to see help with, and the Economic Development Committee wants to use this as a sort of jumping off point to determine what their work product will look like going forward. And then they'll have a baseline so that in a year, 18 months, 2 years, they can send out a similar survey and sort of track what impact they may have had. That, in conjunction with the Economic Development Committee, is going to try and have a joint meeting with the LBA, the Lunenburg Business Association, to start looking at how they can support community activities through the business community and through the town providing maybe logistical support in order to bring some of that sense of community back that was starting to happen pre-COVID, and that goes back, decades, that people have always wanted to see. So they're looking at trying to re-energize the business community to be out and get more people gathering to support that.
All right. And MRPC and NJTC, we don't have reps at this point.
Well, we do, but he's just making his way back, so. We're going to give him some grace period.
Yep. Yep.
I did want to talk about that. I don't know if it's better now or later, but
By all means.
my ability to do things outside of this room is going to be close to non-existent for the foreseeable future. I am not out of the woods yet, as it were. So the amount of time I'm spending with doctors and otherwise having to focus on my health is likely to preclude my ability to be a reliable or decent rep to the MRPC or MJTC.
Okay. Well, and given the proximity to town meeting, we will reorganize after the election
After the
anyway.
election. So we've got
Yeah.
there's probably 2 more of their meetings.
Yeah.
They are still mostly remote meetings. Not to influence, but it is not a.
I can try to tune in and see what I can do, but
Yep.
Please don't feel like you need.
Yeah, no, and I didn't say that for pressure, just
No,
as
I-
a way of information.
I guarantee you cannot pressure me into doing anything right now.
Good.
You get your arm in your mouth and no one can push you down, right?
Right?
All right. Director's items.
So the 3 warrant articles were submitted. You have copies of what was submitted in your packet. I did review them with the select board on this past Tuesday. I didn't get any substantial questions or pushback, so one would hope that they'll move forward with the support that one would expect and hope would get us where we're going. I spoke to the Water District Superintendent. He's coming to our next meeting for the public hearing for the warrant articles. He said he's not able to attend town meeting, but he can have somebody who's available to go.
Adam isn't? Who isn't?
Fran.
Fran, the Water
okay,
District
Fran,
Superintendent.
okay.
Oh, no, Town Council will be there.
Okay.
And so the three articles are the water supply protection, the alteration to the zoning map, which would incorporate the new water protection districts into the zoning map by product of the overlay district, and then the update to the non-medical marijuana bylaw that town council had crafted.
Yep.
See, Mr. Allison spoke too soon when he said it was a short agenda, because I have a presentation for all of you.
I said it was light.
I was hoping for short.
So, I don't know how many of you are bored on Tuesday nights and watch the select board meetings, but this is a presentation I did give to the select board by requirement. So in December of 2021, I believe, the legislature passed MGL 40A, Section 3A, which says that every MBTA community will be required to have a zoning district of reasonable size that, by right, permits a density of 15 housing units per acre. This is you have the text, so it'll give you a little bit more context. And if MBTA communities don't do this, you lose access to Housing Choice Initiative grants, local capital projects funds, and Mass Works infrastructure. So what's an MBTA community? The short answer is us. We are an MBTA adjacent community because Leominster, Fitchburg, and Shirley all have stations. So we're going to be required to have a district of 50 acres, which is what the DHCD has decided is reasonable size. And it needs to support a minimum of 15 units per acre. That would give the potential for the creation of a minimum of 750 housing units. The zoning has to be as of right. It can require site plan approval, but it can't be a special permit. It can't have an up or down on the project itself, just in how it gets shaped. And it says that the site should be served by appropriate infrastructure, if possible. One would expect water and sewer would be required at densities of that magnitude, but they don't necessarily say that. So we have completed the presentation of the draft to the select board, which I did last Tuesday. We're in the progress of completing the MBTA community information form, which is really just a form that you fill out, that you give some general information, and it gives you the opportunity to request technical assistance on the creation of the next step, the plan for compliance and how to receive approval. A lot of this is free technical assistance through the state. And so by the end of this calendar year, we'll be having to notify DHCD that we are not in compliance, and tell them that we'll be submitting a plan in 6 months on how we get to compliance. And then by 2024, we're supposed to have this bylaw adopted. All of this is crazy. By way of information, the most dense development here in Lunenburg is Emerald Place at 8 units per acre on 22 acres. So we're talking more than twice the size of Emerald Place and twice the density.
Well, sort of. You're creating the opportunity.
Well,
for that.
yes, but I think that this town has an experience that many others don't, and you set the table, people will sit down and eat. And so, while it might not happen, 2 months after it gets adopted, the chances of someone doing this are high. The select board at their meeting decided that they were going to complete the community information form and play nice, like we were going to comply, because it doesn't cost us anything, it doesn't obligate us to anything. And then the town manager and myself are going to review those grant programs that are threatened to be shut off from us, and what potential monies are there, and what, if any, monies the town has received previously from those, and start to explore what the financial impact or potential impact could be.
That was going to be my question.
You do have in your packets the regulations that were issued by DHCD.
And I have a question, if I can.
Yeah, sure.
Because I watched this on the news and then I looked it up. So I didn't think it affected us because we don't have an MBTA station.
I was of the same mind.
Where does it say an MBTA adjacent? Because that's what I'm reading the wording of the.
Well, because we're an MBTA community because we are adjacent to a community that has the station, per the definition.
And just for clarification, it says be located not more than a half mile from a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry, bus
Correct.
stop. If applicable, my interpretation of that is that's not applicable to us because we don't
we're
have
not
a
with it.
station.
Well, no, and we're not. So if.
But if we did have one, it would
No,
have to be.
or if the Leominster station were at the base of Day Street,
Yeah.
then the idea would be we'd want to be a half mile from
there.
that, but
Okay.
we're miles from any of the stations.
Yep.
The MBTA community is defined on the second page, Paula.
Because it says that there was a list of MBTA communities attached. So, and I don't see the attachment. On the second page, where?
The second page, third definition from the bottom, MBTA community.
I'm reading that.
Or any adjacent community for purposes of these compliance regulations. So it defines what the MBTA is and all those communities, and it says, and any adjacent communities.
Where? I'm not seeing what you're seeing.
So it goes through all of this,
Yeah.
or an adjacent community for the purposes of these compliance guidelines.
What, were we listed on the attachment?
Yes. So I went to and you should, when you have a chance, read the letter that Mr. Eaton from Montechusett wrote. I was on the Zoom call with the secretary and the folks from DHCD that Montechusett hosted, and to say they were less than gracious about the concerns that were raised to them would be kind exaggeration. Many communities raised that this is just completely infeasible.
Right, and the costs
Townsend-
associated with this kind of density are gonna
Well,
destroy us.
and that Townsend has zero sewerage.
Right.
How does one develop 15 units an acre on a, and we were told by the secretary, well, you could build a batch plant. I inquired about whether or not it was a financial decision for communities to not comply. Well, the law says shall. And so
Shell doesn't mean anything.
Good, perfect.
I decided to not go there.
Shell don't mean shit anymore.
But so this is a redux of the housing choice that the governor tried 3 or 4 years ago that really kind of fell on its face. And so this is now coming back to roost. And I think the biggest the biggest thing that I see in all of this is there's no thoughtful approach to the differences that these communities share.
How long has it been since there has been from the state?
True, but a community like Arlington, a community like Boston, Newton, Watertown, they are built in a way that this is what they're already doing.
They're suburbia.
Right.
Yeah,
And it makes sense
Yes.
because they have the proximity, they have the facility.
Aren't they considered metropolitan Boston?
Yeah.
Yeah, metropolitan Boston, not agricultural
Well,
Lunenburg.
and yes, and I mean
Jesus.
Harvard is listed in there. Shirley, I don't know how the town of Shirley would support something like this. So we're still coming to grips with what this means and how it looks, but this is going to be something that will be coming through a variety of different channels over the next couple of years.
And there's no component built into this that's other than our bylaw that would require 10% to be,
No, there's no affordable housing requirement.
okay.
So I mean, we could be talking about, $500,000 condos.
Okay.
$500,000, 900. It can't be age restricted. It has to be supportive of families or family adjacent. So,
Which in some ways that flies in the face of affordable housing.
Absolutely.
If you create
Yeah.
zoning specifically geared towards high density and ignore the affordable component, although
ours is baked in because it is, and I guess there's nothing that I've seen in reading through this that would prevent us from doing it by right with an affordable requirement.
Okay.
Because it doesn't necessarily speak to economics, it speaks to density and age restriction.
Okay.
So, and I think the idea being that they didn't want somebody to get clever and make a 750 unit district for over 55s that's not going to support families, and
Yep.
they're going to have the swing and elderly district and be getting all of that disposable income and none of the tax issue.
Yeah.
But and I suppose, or I will infer that there are ways we could do this that would make it incredibly difficult for people to develop these. I don't know that they would necessarily be. I don't know how DHCD would look at it. I don't know how the residents would look at it if we took a swath of Whalum, say, where, the district can be multiple districts, but one has to be a minimum of 25, and the total of all the districts has to be 50.
Acres, okay.
And it can be an overlay district, so we could theoretically drop an overlay district, drop it over 25 acres of Whalum or 50 acres of Whalum, where the average lot size is a quarter to a half an acre. So on 50 acres, you're talking 100, 150 different owners. So for someone to come in and actually do a development is going to require a significant amount of financial investment in land alone to get into compiling a parcel where you can actually build something that doing what you want. But I mean, I still think we're playing a dangerous game with that, because someone eventually is going to do that.
Well, and I think part of it is, there aren't many parcels around town that have the infrastructure that are
Correct.
50 acres in size. And so regardless of what the state's view is on things and how this thing shapes up, we're limited.
Yeah.
Right from
From
the
the
get-go.
yeah.
In terms of that. And the other piece of this is this all needs to be approved by town meeting.
Well, that's
So-
that's sort of outlined in what Mr. Eaton put together. I'm gonna need the thing like the president takes when he goes to hostile countries where they put the big plastic shield around the front of his podium, because I imagine standing up in front of town meeting and be like, hey guys, guess what?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, we could write the best bylaw, we could think it's great, and we get to town meeting, and everybody's like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
And what's the
Yeah,
what's
no.
the impact on that?
Yeah. Well, in terms of these grant programs, nothing pops up on my
Yeah.
radar other than MassWorks. But I don't know that we actually received any significant money.
And that's the thing with, though, is MassWorks, they just keep like hoovering more and more stuff into MassWorks.
Okay.
And, you know, a lot of it is infrastructure and economic development and
Yeah.
stuff
think
like that
the
goes into MassWorks.
I think the only project that we've discussed recently is the warehouse down by
Yes,
Keating's.
correct.
Because the
Well, they wanted it to be,
intersection was going to be MassWorks.
they wanted
Built.
it to be
Prepped.
prepped so that if the town wanted to pursue funding.
Yep.
And that's the thing. It's really hard to delineate what you might want going forward. Mm-hmm. And you know, if you cut off your opportunity to be competitive for millions of dollars, what's the impact versus having to spend millions of dollars annually on a significant population or housing rise? So I mean, we're not going to solve this right now. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that it's out there.
I saw
and
it on the
it's-
news and
it's
said, oh,
coming.
it doesn't apply to us.
Surprise!
Yeah.
Now, how about if we were to do this all on an entirely town-owned parcel that had sewer? That would fit their mold, right?
It might, and see that's the thing. We don't know what the review criteria looks like, and it's all subjective to the reviewer. They're you know.
Oh, this is just a draft.
It is, and I mean, even if you read through this, though, at the end it says at the discretion of the department's review. So, I mean, you can't put it in a swamp. Okay, great. That makes sense.
Put it on a landfill.
I don't know what the impact of needing a beneficial use determination would be, and whether or not that would create that the landfill may or may not adequately serve that. And is there sewer down there?
There could be.
Well, Tri-Town is sewered,
Yeah.
But Tri-Town Sewer is in Summer Street,
right?
and they run a private line down Young's Road.
Oh, yeah, we have frontage on Young's Road. Oh, we have frontage on, oh, yeah.
No, it's all on Young's Road.
I was gonna say frontage on John
So,
Fish.
and I get it. I mean, this is the type of thing that we have to really think out and figure out. I don't know what the answers are,
No,
which
but,
is
but honestly, this isn't a mandate. This is just, if you want to keep receiving XYZ funds, then you have to do this. What we could do is, we don't need, it's stick shoved in an orifice, and it's carrot stuffed in an orifice, and it's all stick when it comes to the state. Yes, it's exactly what I thought. Stick and carrot, but all stick. But we don't.
Wow.
But we don't need the carrot. Well, I mean, but it's not a requirement. It's not a mandate.
Well, that's what you're going to do.
according to
is-
the secretary. It is.
Well, it's not a mandate. It just simply says that, and they can't mandate it. If town
Exactly.
meeting doesn't
I know.
approve it,
I know.
and basically, the bottom line is we're, like Matt just said, and you yourself said, we just are not eligible for these funds. So to determining how much money we've actually received from these funds is the first step. But when you look at the cost of 750 homes, you've got to determine whether or not it makes sense to move forward with this. And I got to tell you, I think the math is not going to work, and it doesn't make sense to move forward with this.
Not at this point.
Yeah.
Just FYI, it's out there. It's coming.
Yeah,
We're not going to shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Nope. I mean, we talked about Pondview, and obviously the master plan is all dependent on funding.
Meeting schedule, our next meeting is April 11th. We will have our public hearing for the zoning warrant articles, 6 PM, Town Hall. Any public comment?
Nope.
I have one.
Any comments from the board. Mrs. Berger.
As you all know, I am not running again. My understanding is no one was nominated for the seat. And I just want to remind people out there that the last day to obtain nomination papers is March 31st. And I am really hoping that someone will come forward. It's a very interesting position with some great people, and I hope that someone will come forward to fill my seat.
Thank you.
It's the people's seat.
It's the people's seat. Well, right, to fill this seat that I'm currently occupying.
She's keeping it warm for you.
Oh, I had a board member comment. I just wanted to say thank you to all the members of the board for kind of picking up extra when I've been kind of fighting for my life for 6 months. That's very much appreciated.
And thank you for going out of your way while you've been fighting for your life.
Yeah, I can't tell you how glad I am to see you, and thank you for coming back and sitting here, even though I know you're not out of the woods yet, as you just said, but
Yep.
but thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of the town.
I'm glad to still be here. Right, but both ways.
In all senses, right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brenner, for rejoining us, and we all wish you a speedy recovery. And I was delighted to have the entire board here this evening. And it's been a while.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of ups and downs over the last few months, that's for sure. So, excellent. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Mr. Torgensen?
Aye.
And I for myself. Thank you all.